A deadly shooting inside an apartment tonight. No arrests have been made as the triple homicide investigation is underway in Lexington County. A Midlands restaurant is serving up a tasty new addition that's gone from the table to the Guinness Book of World Records thanks to a platinum dish. Trapped in Haiti amid violent protests this weekend, a church group from right here in the Midlands is headed home tonight. Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Josh Berry. Former solicitor Dan Johnson has been sentenced to federal prison for using government money for personal expenses. Happening tonight right here on ABC, President Trump says he will make his selection for the vacancy on the Supreme Court tonight at 9. The three other states that do not have hate crime statutes on the books are Georgia, Arkansas, and Wyoming. One bill that would set punishments for assault or threats based on a person's race, gender, religion, or sexual orientation is currently in the hands of the House Judiciary Committee. The floodwaters have receded significantly tonight. I was told earlier today it was so high that people could kayak down the city streets here in downtown Charleston. And this is breaking news this afternoon that the remains of 5-year-old Nevaeh Adams have been found. They found them last Friday in a landfill where they had been searching for a month to find that little girl's remains. Tomorrow kicks off South Carolina's tax-free weekend. You can buy certain items without the state's 6% sales tax. We're in front of the Lee Central High School where they have set up a shelter for people in this area. They tell me that they have seen some people from the coastal communities coming in here, but most of the people that are here right now are locals. Now we know the fans are ready, but it appears they can get too rowdy as well. More fans are getting ejected from Williams-Brice Stadium than in any other football venue in the country. And taking a closer look at some of the storms around the nation and its impact on travel, multiple storms moving across parts of the country are putting an obstacle in the way of an already busy holiday season. I'm standing next to Polly. And Polly, just like the fair, it's the fair's 150th birthday. This is Polly's first birthday. A 2-year-old child and a driver were taken to the hospital after a truck slammed into a Sumter home this morning. Parents are upset about a proposed rezoning that could force their kids into different schools starting next year. Good evening and thank you for joining us for ABC Columbia News at 11. I'm Josh Berry. Tonight, parents met with Richland 2 administrators about the rezoning of 2 subdivisions. ABC Columbia's Alexis Frazier was there. She joins us live now with more on this. Alexis, they're running out of chances to make their voices heard, but administrators insist there are good reasons to do this. 2 men in connection to a Lexington home burglary last week have been arrested in Alabama. Christian Brown and Antonio Priester have each been charged with burglary, kidnapping, grand larceny, and armed robbery after authorities say on November 19th, they broke into a woman's home on the 100 block of Martell Drive, stole several items, including her credit cards, then used her car to get away. Brown and Priester were arrested in Auburn, Alabama the next day. Authorities in Lancaster County say a 10-year-old boy was shot and killed by another 10-year-old boy while playing by themselves on November 15th. Deputies say the boys were playing in a Lancaster home when one fired the 9mm gun at the other, then carried him out of the house. Authorities say the parent who hid the gun under a mattress has been charged with neglect. Deputies are talking to prosecutors to determine what to do with the boy who fired that gun. Columbia police arrested an 18-year-old accused of crashing a stolen SUV into a house early this morning. Javino Bookert faces charges including possession of a stolen vehicle and a hit and run. The car was stolen from a home on Harrison Road. When police spotted that car, they say they tried to pull him over on English Avenue, but he refused to stop. Officers lost sight of that SUV, but were flagged down by neighbors after it crashed into a home on Parkwood Drive. One person died after a struggle early Sunday morning. Investigators responded to a home on Percival Road. That was around 4:30 in the morning. RCSD says 2 people were involved in a struggle when a gun went off, killing one of them. No one has been charged, but that investigation continues. Now, with Thanksgiving just days away, some health officials say not being careful with how you prepare your feast could cause major problems. The Palmetto Poison Center says the turkey is the main culprit behind most of their calls leading up to Thanksgiving. Officials say leaving turkey out on the counter to thaw in room temperature encourages bacteria to multiply, leading to foodborne illnesses like salmonella. The Palmetto Poison Center recommends refrigerating the turkey at least 24 hours before you prepare it, or thawing it out in cold tap water, provided you change that water every half hour. There are guidelines to recommend how long you should thaw your turkey in a refrigerator based on how much they weigh. Now, Michaels also says you should set your oven at no lower than 325 degrees and to not carve the turkey on the same cutting board as fruits and vegetables. Police in West Columbia have not arrested the suspect in a shooting that killed 2 people. The Lexington County coroner says the victim. And with that, the heat is behind us. A major cool down this evening after strong storms blew through the Midlands earlier today. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Josh Berry.
And I'm Rochelle Dean. We're going to go straight to the Weather Center where Chief Meteorologist John Farley is standing.
The families of inmates killed in a prison riot last year say corrections officials could have done more to prevent it. Wrongful death federal lawsuits filed by families of 2 of the 7 inmates killed claim South Carolina corrections officials violated the constitutional rights of the inmates. The lawsuits say Lee correctional employees knew of broken door locks, overcrowding, and contraband use, but made no efforts to eliminate the issues. No charges have been filed at this point. A Kershaw County man is missing and is in need of medical attention. The Kershaw County Sheriff's Office says Paul Dollarhide went missing around noon on Sunday when he went to go to a store near his home. He has health issues that do require medical attention. If you happen to know where this man is or happen to see him, please call Crime Stoppers at 1-888-CRIME-SC. A roundtable discussion was held with national public health officials to talk about ending the HIV epidemic here in South Carolina. ABC Columbia's Maria Szatkowski was at that meeting to see what plan officials have in store.
Representatives from the Health Resources and Services Administration attended.
Robert Mueller will appear before 2 congressional committees tomorrow. His testimony has the ability to make or break impeachment proceedings after Mueller said in April if he were able to clear the president of obstruction charges, he would have. Here's ABC's Jonathan Carl. Victims and first responders of 9/11 have one more hurdle to clear before getting the funding they need to cover health care for decades to come. Today, the Senate passed a bill that would compensate those who were injured in the September 11th attacks and in its aftermath through the year 2090. The original fund was running out of money and was expected to expire in December of 2020. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the fund is expected to cost about $10 billion over the next decade and will cover medical costs of victims without limitations. Jon Stewart and surviving first responders have been pushing lawmakers to pass that extension. And breaking news tonight, the Lexington County coroner has identified the 3 men who were killed. 28-year-old Branton Booker and 26-year-old Sheldon Livingston died at the scene.
27-year-old Dwayne Williams died a short time later at the hospital.
Tonight, a massive and what has been a deadly storm stretching from the Gulf to the northeast has caused multiple accidents as freezing conditions slicken the roadways. In the south, before it reached us, that same storm system produced more than 24 tornadoes, killing 3 people. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez. You can now kick back and enjoy a cold one at a Carolina game. Today, the USC Board of Trustees unanimously approved the sale of alcoholic beverages at football, basketball, and baseball games. ABC Columbia's Tim Scott explains how the university wanted to do their homework before taking that step.
There were a lot of people that didn't think we needed to wait as long as we did.
And just across the street today, dozens of protesters took over the State House grounds to voice their disapproval for the president and their support for his impeachment. Protesters say it's time lawmakers listen to what their constituents have to say in a time where the country needs strong leadership.
We want to let Senator Scott, Senator Graham, and Representative Wilson know that we're watching.
The pro-impeachment protest at the State House was one of many protests staged across the country. The House of Representatives will hold that historic vote on whether or not to impeach the president tomorrow. And for the first time in more than 2 decades, Congress has approved funding for gun violence research. $25 million out of a $1.4 trillion spending bill passed to avoid a government shutdown will be allocated toward gun violence research. Half of the $25 million will go to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the other half will go to the National Institutes of Health. Now, the funding comes as the nation continues to grapple with the effects of frequent mass shootings. The CDC has avoided firearms research because of its interpretation of the so-called Dickey Amendment. which prohibits the CDC from using funds to advocate for or promote gun control. Former Solicitor Dan Johnson has been sentenced to federal prison for using government money for personal expenses. This afternoon, a judge sentenced Johnson to 1 year and a day after he pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud in February. Johnson was originally facing dozens of federal charges, but the others were dropped as part of a plea deal. The U.S. Supreme Court will not hear the Michael Slager case. Slager shot and killed Walter Scott in April of 2015. The former North Charleston police officer had petitioned the Supreme Court to hear an appeal of his prison sentence. He pleaded guilty in 2017 to the federal charge of depriving Scott of his civil rights under the color of law and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Slager had appealed the conviction in lower courts twice before. Both of those appeals were denied. The men and women killed and the survivors of the Emanuel AME shooting were honored today at Allen University. Today, the university held its Mother Emanuel 9-day of remembrance commemoration ceremony. At the event, the inaugural Emanuel Lives Award was given to Alana Simmons Grant. Simmons Grant is the granddaughter of one of the Emanuel 9 and the founder of the nonprofit Hate Won't Win.
4 years later, be doing the work that not only continues in making sure that the legacy of my grandfather is one of love, but as well as the victims and the survivors and anyone really who's been affected by hate crimes or discrimination, bullying, etc.
3 of the 9 killed at Mother Emanuel were graduates of Allen University. Riverbanks Zoo will get its full funding from Lexington County. Last night, the county council voted to amend their recommended funding of the zoo to $1.2 million. Last month, we told you the council was considering cutting that by more than half. The council will hold its second reading on that budget next week. And the zoo's Toucan Tuesdays start next week. Riverbanks Zoo and Harvest Hope team up every year for the summer food drive. Starting next Tuesday, you can bring 2 canned goods to get 2 people in for the price of 1. According to the zoo, since the program began in 2010, they have collected close to 40,000 pounds of food for Midlands families. Toucan Tuesdays will take place every Tuesday through August 13th.